recording. And here we go. So, League 101. I'm going to start with some basics about the map. We will go into a discussion about champion archetypes and some common strategies. There's a little bit more than just that, but those are kind of the three basics I'm supposed to be hitting on today. So, as far as the map goes, League of Legends is played on one single competitive map. It's called Summoner's Rift, and I'm just going to kind of give you guys a detailed explanation and look at it. So, these areas right here are each base. So this is red team's base, and this is blue team's base. And blue team and red team are always on the same side of the map. There's certain advantages to being on blue team, and there's certain advantages to being on red team. I won't get into that too much, but mostly it just has to do with like drafting and stuff like that. There's the map layout is mirrored, so it's supposed to be as equal as possible. So in Summoner's Rift, there are 3 lanes, and there's a jungle. So this is top lane, this is mid lane, this is bot lane, and everything you see here, all of this like these walls, like the stone and these trees and stuff, that is a jungle. And then this part here is a river. So there's like 2 rivers, and I will explain what is with this like circle later on. So let's go into discussion about top lane. So top lane is that highlighted part right there, and you. I should mention that there are 5 players in league games. So you have a top laner, a jungler, a mid laner, and a bot laner, and a support. And so the top laner has 1 champion in this lane. Normally, they are like melee champions. So they could be like tanks and bruisers. We'll get into a discussion more about like what tanks do, what bruisers do. Occasionally there's like mages, but top lane actually has like the widest variety of feasible picks. You can pick a lot of different stuff in top lane. It's a very flexible lane, and normally it's where you can like draft if you need like an assassin on your team, or you need like a specific weird niche thing on your team comp. Top lane is normally the place where you experiment the most. So going to mid lane, basically most mid laners are just mages. So there are different types of mages. There's one type called a control mage, and there's another type called burst mage. Burst mages basically just do a bunch of damage in a short amount of time, but are fairly vulnerable once they get like their abilities off. Control mages are supposed to sort of control a fight, so they'll like make zones of control and stuff like that. Let's say if you have a control mage here, he might be able to put a spell down here, which like zones the enemy off. So think something like a Diva ult or something like that, right? Your control mages are going to have those kinds of abilities. And the other like main archetype that goes into mid lane are assassins. So all the assassins in the game pretty much just go mid lane. There are some exceptions to that, but most of them will go mid. And assassins are exactly what they sound like. They just kill you really fast with a combo. But if they can't kill you really fast, if you're too tanky for them to kill, and they just don't do enough damage to important targets on the team, they're pretty vulnerable. So we'll get into a discussion about that more. So this is bot lane, and this is a unique lane because there are 2 champions in this lane. There are only ever 1 in top or mid, but there's always 2 in bot lane. And one of these are called the bot laner. Normally this is going to be the ADC. Whenever you hear ADC, he's always going to be basically bot lane. The real term is supposed to be marksman, but everybody calls them ADCs, which stands for attack damage carry. Recently, in the last couple of weeks of the game, mages have found a home in bot lane, but that is fairly rare and pretty niche. But it can be done. But normally, all of your teams want an ADC, and they always go bot lane. And in bot lane also, you always have a support player. And so there are different types of supports, but there's kind of three main types. There are tank supports, and that's just what it sounds like. They absorb a lot of damage. There's different types of tanks. So there's like engage tanks and peel tanks. So think of like if this was an Overwatch analogy, engage tanks could be like Winston and Diva. You know, like they kind of uh, pick a fight. Like you can't really do anything. They jump in and they try to distract people. Distract people. Um, Peel tanks could be thought of like maybe sort of Bridget or something like that. Somebody who has abilities that can like disengage. So you could actually call this like kind of engage and disengage tanks. There are healing supports. So think of your Mercy and Anna and things like that in Overwatch. That's where they would go. And then there are roaming supports, which are a little bit unique. There are a lot of tank supports that like to roam, and we'll get into roaming a little bit later. But that basically just means that they don't stay around bot side. They kind of can leave bottom lane sometimes and like go mid or go top and like try to get a kill or something like that. And they're pretty niche. But that is a discussion we'll get into a little later. So jungle. Jungle's probably the most complicated. The other lanes are pretty easy to understand, but jungle are all of this stuff in between the lanes. Basically, one champion from either team roams around this jungle in no particular order to take camps. Mid laners, like they always stay mid. Top laners always stay out. It just makes sense. But junglers don't have to start at any particular place. They just start at what they think is best. Um, and by the way, if you guys have any questions or anything, if you want to stop me, feel absolutely free. Don't be afraid to interrupt if you have any questions. Is everybody following so far? Is this making sense?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're good. Thanks.
Okay. So the jungles are mirrored and flipped, first of all. So that's what these arrows are supposed to represent. This quadrant of the jungle is the exact same as this. It's just mirrored. And so the river here is supposed to be like kind of the dividing line. Like you got the blue team over here and you got the red team over here. This is blue team's jungle and this is red team's jungle, but they have the same exact camps in both. So they're mirrored and flipped just like that. So this blue jungle, these quadrants that look like sort of more purple or bluish are the home of the blue buff. It's technically called the Sentinel, but everybody just calls it the blue buff. And it's a monster that, when killed, it gives the person who killed it a bonus to like their resources, right? So you kill it, you get a specific bonus, and you get some cooldown reduction. And cooldown reduction is just what it sounds like. If you have like 50% cooldown reduction, your abilities come up 50% faster. So pretty straightforward. Red buff is technically called the Brambleback, but everybody calls it red buff. It spawns right here and right here, and it gives you extra damage and slows if you kill it. So I could get into the other camps. Basically, these are Krugs. This is Wraiths. This is a Gromp. These are Wolves, and it's mirrored on both sides. You don't have to worry about those too much. The main thing is this: that the red buff and the blue buff are the most important camps in the jungle, and they take a long time to spawn once you've killed them, but they give really good buffs to the people who kill them. And something I should mention too, for instance, so this is the blue side jungle, but if the blue side jungler decides to walk into this jungle, he can take those camps. They're not exclusively this team's like possession. They're neutral monsters, and if you kill them, you get them. So they don't have any type of allegiance, and you can totally steal them. That's an important concept called counter jungling. So the river is in between these jungles, very easily visible on the map. And there's a difference between the North and the South River. And this is probably the biggest difference on the map in terms of just the map not being mirrored perfectly, and there being some advantages to each side. Basically, in the North River, this pit here spawns one of two different monsters. At 10 minutes, a monster called the Rift Herald spawns here. And the Rift Herald's just this big purple crab. I wish I had provided a picture of it, but it's just like big purple crab looking thing, and if you kill it, it drops its eye. And when you pick the eye up, you can crush that eye, and it summons the Rift Herald. But this time the Rift Herald spawns wherever you were, and then it like starts to attack the enemy turrets. Um, and so it just basically it works for you. It tries to kill the enemy base. Um, but it despawns at 20 minutes, so you only have a 10-minute window to kill it. The next thing that spawns is the Baron buff, and the Baron buff is probably the most important objective in the game. If you kill the Baron, your team gets a massive buff to their damage, and it makes it very much easier to siege the enemy base. It affects the minions on your team, and I'll get a little bit more into minions in this next slide, but it is definitely like the crux of a lot of games, and it's the objective that your team wants the most. Only one person can have it at a time, so whatever team kills it first is going to get it. It's pretty hard to kill. It normally takes five, like all five of your team members to kill it. But once it's 20 minutes, it will stay for the rest of the game until somebody kills it. And if somebody kills it, they'll get the buff for 5 minutes, and then it will respawn in about, I think it takes 7 minutes to respawn. So it will keep respawning, and if you keep killing it, you'll keep getting the buff. So on the South River, different types of monsters arise. Technically 5, but basically dragons always spawn in this pit right here. And there's 4 different types of dragons. Well, technically there's 2 different types of dragons. You have elemental dragons and an elder dragon. So of the elemental dragons, you have 4 different types. So at the beginning of the game, I think 2 minutes into the game, a dragon spawns here, and it is completely random. It's either going to be an infernal dragon, an ocean dragon. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. Infernal dragon, ocean dragon, cloud dragon, or mountain dragon. And based on the one that it is, it will give you a different buff if you kill it. Think about, just like if you killed one of these red buff or blue buff saints. The dragon is more important than that. It's an objective that teams want to fight over early in the game. And yeah, once you kill it, you get a certain buff, and after 5 minutes, a new dragon will spawn, and it's in totally random order. There's no particular rhyme to it. You could get 4 infernal dragons in one game. You could get one of each. It doesn't matter. After 30 minutes, if you kill a dragon in the pit, you kill the last elemental dragon, an elder dragon will spawn 5 minutes after that. And what the elder dragon does is when you kill the elder dragon, it gives you a huge buff, sort of like Baron. It gives your team a bunch of extra damage. And so teams will fight over the elder dragon so that they're more powerful than the other team so that they could get Baron. That's normally how the rotation works out. But this doesn't, you kind of rarely see teams go for this because it requires the game to be pretty long. It's normally like 35 minutes, 40 minutes into the game, somebody will start attacking that dragon. And just like the Baron, it takes a lot of people to kill. It's pretty strong. Dragons take multiple people to kill, but not necessarily all 5. Rift Herald, same thing. Could take 1 or 2. But yeah. The last thing that's important to mention about the rivers is the scuttle crab. So the scuttle crab, it's also not pictured. I wish I had brought a picture of it, but it looks like a crab, obviously, and it spawns in the river randomly. And when you kill the scuttle crab, it provides some vision in the river, and it just gives you some golden experience. It gives you a lot of golden experience. So these are like smaller objectives that spawn much more continuously throughout the game. I think they spawn every like 1 minute and 30 seconds or maybe 2 minutes. I could be wrong about that. I'm not sure which figure, but they spawn quite frequently. But when you kill them, your team gets a lot of golden experience from them. And so they've become part of the jungler's main job. The jungler really wants to take that scuttle crab. It's a big deal for him. So it affects a lot of games that way. And both rivers start with a scuttle crab, but after they're both killed, at that point, the scuttle crab that spawns after is going to be on one side of the river, but not the other, and it's completely random which river he spawns in. So anyway, that basically sums up the map. Anybody have questions so far about that? No, everybody's good.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
So next step would be turrets and inhibitors. So turrets are kind of the main part of the game. The whole point of the game is to kill the turrets and then kill the enemy base. Um, so there are 3 turrets in a lane. They've got these 2 different names. So this, let's see. Yes, so let me go back actually, and I can show you on this map. So you can actually see them on this map. They're like these statue-looking things here. Same here. These are the blue side turrets. This one's called the outer turret or the tier 1 turret. This one's called the inner turret or the tier 2 turret. This one's called the inhibitor turret or the tier 3 turret. And the thing here, this little crystal on the ground, is called an inhibitor. And there are 3 of them. So there's 1 inhibitor for each lane and 3 turrets. And going forward again. Basically, turrets target and attack enemies that walk near them. They are meant to protect the inhibitor and the base. And if you kill all 3 turrets and the inhibitor behind it, the enemy team spawns stronger minions. So, well, actually, let me rephrase that. If you kill the enemy inhibitor, your team will spawn stronger minions. And with those minions, you can help to take over the enemy base much more easily. Behind the inhibitors are another 2 turrets and the nexus, and if you destroy the nexus, you win the game. So, again, to show that, if you kill this turret, kill this turret, kill this turret, and kill this thing, your minions in this lane get stronger. Not in each lane, just in the lane you kill the inhibitor in. And then if you can escort that big minion wave to this is their base. You have the 2 turrets here that defend the nexus, and this is the nexus. And if you kill these 2 turrets and you kill the nexus, it's a goner. One thing I should mention is that you have to kill them in order. So let's say if this turret's up, but you find a way to go over here, you can't just start attacking this turret. It won't actually let you deal damage to it. You have to take this turret out first. So that's how it works. You have to kill the inhibitor before you can kill these turrets. You have to kill these turrets before you can kill the nexus. So kind of works in succession like that.
Quick question for you.
Sure.
Once that inhibitor is down, does it stay down? I'm coming from Smite, and like the Phoenix will come back.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, the inhibitor respawns in I think 5 minutes. So you kill it, and then you have 5 minutes of spawn time for your minions, and then as soon as the enemy inhibitor is about to respawn, you stop spawning those big minions. So there's actually like 1 or 2 waves that are going to spawn on your team that aren't the big minions. I wish I had a picture of the super minion. I should have brought one, but yeah. So these respawn each 5 minutes. They're not down forever. But when you do lose an inhibitor, you lose a lot of pressure on the map. So it's meant to sort of just reward the teams that are ahead, is sort of the idea behind it, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been talking a lot about minions, but I haven't shown you yet. So minion waves are these things here. These are red side minions. These are blue side minions. They spawn as 6-man groups and walk down each lane. They walk a little bit slower than champions do, and a new wave spawns once every 30 seconds. This wave is a cannon minion wave, so I mentioned it here. A siege minion spawns once every 3 waves. This actually changes once you get to the later stages of the game. I think past 25 minutes, every minion wave is a siege minion. I think it might be 30 minutes. But yeah, those rules change a little bit. But you really don't have to worry about that too much. Basically, these siege minions are very strong. They take more damage to kill. So they're tankier, they deal more damage, and they deal a lot of damage to turrets. So the siege minion waves are kind of just a beefier minion wave. They deal damage to each other. They're just non-player characters. They walk into each other, and if you just completely leave them alone, they will just all kill each other, and nothing will happen in the game at all. They'll never really get to one turret or the other. But as a champion, you can deal damage to minions yourself, And if you kill the enemy minion wave before it kills yours, it'll walk towards the enemy turret. So I can show you here. If the minion wave like crashes here, let's say, just looking at top lane, if the minion wave crashes here, and you kill the enemy minions, and there's no champion to respond, your minions are going to walk to this turret and start attacking it. And then you can deal damage to the turret. So that's how you kind of take turrets down. So minions are probably the most important part about the entire game. And people like to think that like, oh, killing the enemy champions is more important and things like that. But really, it's the minions. The minions are the entire reason why you win or lose. You need them to take the enemy base down. As I mentioned here, they debuff turrets significantly. So when you try to attack a turret without minions around, the turret will attack you first, and it's really really tanky. It's really hard to kill. You can do it, but it's not necessarily recommended. When you have minions nearby, the turret health drops significantly, and it doesn't attack you. It attacks the minions instead. So that's why the minions are so important. There are 3 different types of minions. I've already mentioned siege minions, but these here are casters, these like wizard-looking ones, and these here are melee minions. They're also called creeps, by the way. So the melee creeps, well, it's pretty obvious. They just attack you in melee, and the caster minions attack you from a range. But they deal the same amount of damage over time, actually, so they have the same DPS. The other important thing about minions is not only do you use them to kill the enemy turrets, but you use them to make gold and provide experience. So they're your main source of income, and when you're around the enemy minions, when enemy minions die near you, I should say, you gain experience and you start leveling up. So if you never make yourself present when the enemy minions are dying, you won't level up at all. And so minion waves are very important for you to like attend to. You really want to kill all the enemy minions that you can, because the more you kill, the more gold you get, and the more items you can buy, and the more powerful you get. And so you'll level up, you'll get items, and sometimes people just win the game because they kill more minions than the enemy does. And you'll see that later, but going on away from minions towards champions, just the basics of champions are they have a passive, they have 3 normal abilities, and they have an ultimate. So, like in Overwatch, Bridget has like 7 abilities, and Mercy has like 2 or whatever. But in League, it's pretty standardized. There are actually some exceptions to this rule, kind of. But for the most part, you always use 4 keys. So, like, the line of abilities are here. This is a passive. These are Aurelion Sol's 3 abilities, and this is his ultimate. And then these are, sort of illustration of each one. So his passive are these stars that circle around him. This is his Q ability. This one, it's called Star Surge. His W, which is this, makes his stars bigger and do more damage. And this cool looking thing is his ultimate. And so all champions have those basic things. They also all have a health bar, obviously, and they have a resource bar. Now, the resource bar actually changes. 95% of the time, it's going to be mana, and you use mana to cast abilities. So, like, you can't cast abilities without spending some mana, and if you don't have enough mana, you can't cast any abilities. Some champions are an exception to this rule. Some of them can always cast their abilities. They don't need mana, but those aren't really important to get into right now. So second thing about champions is that they all bring 2 summoner spells, and here are all the summoner spells you can bring. There's a couple in here that don't actually exist anymore, but this is the best picture I could find. Basically, all players must take 2, and they have really long cooldowns. They have cooldowns anywhere from 3 to 6 minutes. So they're very important. They're highly impactful abilities that can definitely change the tone of a game. And using them skillfully can definitely net you some kills and some victories. So Flash, which is this one right here, is probably the most important summoner spell in the game. Almost everybody takes it. Out of the 150 champions, there are like 3 or 4 who don't. Basically, it just teleports you to your mouse cursor immediately. It has a limited range, but it's definitely one of the most important abilities in the game. Teleport is exactly what it sounds like. You just basically click on the ground somewhere, You have to click on an ally, so you can teleport to a minion or a turret normally, and it just brings you there within 5 seconds. So that it's like a long range flash almost. And this is a pretty essential summoner spell on a lot of top laners. There are some mid laners who will take it. There are even some bot laners and supports who might take it. Um, it has the longest cooldown in the game, 6 minutes, and it might be the most impactful summoner spell in the game. It can totally change the scene of a fight and things like that. Um, I'll get into that more a little bit when we talk about split pushing, but definitely super important. Ignite it's super simple. It just does damage to enemy champions. So since that's so useful, a lot of people take it. Heal is what marksmen almost always bring. It heals you and an ally near you. And so since bot lane has 2 people, you almost always bring it. And then smite is what junglers bring. So you actually have to bring smite as a jungler. You're not allowed to not bring it. And it's essential for them, but if you're a laner, you never take it. It's totally useless for you. It basically allows you to buy special items, and it allows you to kill the jungle camps and collect extra XP from them. So pretty essential for them. I was going to go into a discussion about champion archetypes, but so far, before I do that, is everybody good? Does everybody have questions about the last couple things I've mentioned?
I'm good.
Nope, sounds like we're all good. Okay, so tanks. Tanks are normally found in the top lane, but there are some supports who are tanks. Um, throughout the game, I mentioned collecting gold. Throughout the game, you collect gold from minions, and you buy items with them. So you go back to the base, you buy items. Tanks like to buy, well, tank items. So armor, magic resistance, and HP. What armor does, let's see, actually, I don't have a slide about damage types, I think. I think I forgot to include that, but let me explain this real quick. So there are 2 different damage types in the game. If I actually bring it to Aurelion Soul, see, this guy, he does magic damage. I mean, he kind of looks like he does, right? And so magic damage is one type of damage. If you want him to deal less damage to you, you can buy magic resistance. It's exactly what it sounds like. It just makes enemy champions do less magic damage to you. So if they're like completely deal magic damage, they'll just deal less to you. There are other champions like this one right here, this guy with the spear. He's physical damage, and if you want to negate portions of his damage, you can buy armor. So that's exactly what tanks do. And of course, you can buy health points too. Tanks are pretty weak at clearing waves. They're bad at killing enemy minions for the most part. There are exceptions to this rule, so take this with a grain of salt. But for the most part, something you can say about tanks is that they have poor wave clear. And so that can be one of their weaknesses. They're not very good laners because they don't usually have ranged abilities to trade with enemy champions. So if I'm playing a champion top lane that has like a bow and arrow or something and has some ranged abilities, and you're playing a tank, I can just kind of hit you and you can't hit me back. And that makes them lose a lot of trades. On the flip side, they are pretty easy to like set up kills for. So basically, tanks they have a lot of crowd control abilities. So to make the analogy with Overwatch, Bridget can like shield bash someone and stun them, right? And that shield bash can allow one of your like DPS, like McCree or Widowmaker or something, to get a headshot. And so if your allies decide to walk over to your lane to try to kill your lane opponent, you can lock them down pretty easily with most tanks. You have tons of CC, you can like stun them, you can snare them, etc. And so they are also really good at team fighting. So at some point in the game, normally, like when the Baron comes up, as I was mentioning before, you kind of need 5 people to kill it. So a lot of times a team will like group up as 5 people. They will abandon their waves and their minions, and they will go try to take the Baron. And so tanks are really good at killing the enemies when you have 5 people from one team and 5 people at the other team. They go to Baron at the same time. Tanks are very good at like engaging on the other team. They're good at peeling for their carries. They're good at stunning people, creating space, disrupting, making sure that the enemy like mages and stuff can't do damage, and they just absorb a ton of damage. So you can deal damage to them all day, and it's really hard to kill them. So that's what they're good at. If you're the kind of person who likes team fighting, tanks are probably for you. They're normally a must-have in any team comp, but you don't technically need them all the time. But so bruisers are kind of like in between tanks and damage dealers. So think of like Doomfist, honestly. They kind of invest in a general mix of stats. So they can buy armor, they can buy MR, they can buy HP, so they can buy like tanky items, but they can also build like damage items too. They don't just stick to either one. Normally they buy like a mixture of both. Bruisers tend to have like moderate wave clear. Some of them have pretty bad wave clear until they buy some items. So like these damage items will help them kill the minions faster. They're normally very good at trading and dueling. So if the game was just like 1 versus 1, bruisers normally are really good at that. They have abilities in their kit that are like single target damage. They don't have a lot of area of effect damage. Think of like meteor strike or feral. That's a AoE damage, but shield bash is like single target, right? So they have a lot of that type of stuff in their kit, and it's pretty hard to out damage them in their trade patterns. Bruisers are almost always melee, so they can get like kited out, and so this is what makes them bad at team fighting. Normally they're bad at team fighting. Again, there's exceptions to this, but they have pretty short range and they're easy to kite, so it doesn't make them that great in those like 5v5 situations. They're good at split pushing, and I'll explain what that means later.
Jake, what's kiting?
Kiting. Okay, so yeah, I should mention that. So kiting is like, how do I explain this? When you're a ranged character and you're attacking a melee character, sort of just attacking them and walking back. So like attacking them, walking backwards, attacking them, walking away from them. So as they're just walking towards you, you're not letting them get like closer. So you keep walking back and then attacking them. So that's what
Oh,
kiting is.
maintain the distance.
Yeah, so you maintain distance, exactly. That's what kiting is, and that's what bruisers are normally bad at. They normally are very like immobile. They don't normally have like an ability to just like teleport somewhere. So that's why flash is so important, because like a lot of times if you have like an ADC, we'll get into what an ADC is. A guy with a bow and arrow, basically. If you have that sort of guy and he's attacking a bruiser, the bruiser only option is to like flash on him if he wants to get in range, normally. And so sometimes that bruiser can like win that fight, but normally speaking, if you don't have flash up, it has a 5-minute cooldown, so it's pretty long. In a 25, 30-minute game, you can only use it like maybe 2 or 3 times. Then it's pretty easy to kite him. So that's one of the weaknesses of bruisers. And I'm just saying this in general. There's exceptions to this. Yeah.
And then as far as kiting goes, I know like in WoW or Smite even, like there's not you're not supposed to backpedal. In this game, I guess it's a little different. But is there like a certain like a technique or best practice as far as kiting goes?
Yeah, I would say it's just I would say it's just practice, really. There's I can hook you guys up with a video on kiting. It sounds like this is a topic of interest.
I'm a hunter, yeah, by trade, so I would
Okay.
probably play bottom lane.
Yeah.
I'm curious to play an archer. I have Varus unlocked in
Okay.
Ash, so yeah.
I'm gonna talk about marksman next then, because these are the guys that kite. I'll get to mages next, but so yeah, I will definitely give you guys a primer on kiting. Some of the resources that I'm going to give you guys at the end of the session will help you figure that out. I'll link you guys to a video on the importance of kiting or something like that. I'm sure I can find something, and that will like give you a visual aid on how to explain it. It's considered one of the more difficult things in League to do. It has a high skill ceiling, if that makes sense. So the skill floor is like moderate, but to do it consistently and do it really well, it's definitely kind of hard. It requires you to just be a good mechanical player. So marksmen, these guys who kite, they're considered one of the most integral champions in the game. For 8 years in this game, they were like mandatory to have on your team. In recent patches, they're not quite as mandatory, but they're still really, really useful, and you almost always want one. They normally build physical damage items, so think swords, axes, that kind of things. It's kind of silly if they're ranged and they buy a sword, but you know. So they build a lot of physical damage. They don't buy many tank stats, so they're very like low on health, and they're pretty easy to like kill immediately. Think of like the difference between Doomfist going on your Zenyatta and Doomfist going on your Roadhog, right? The marksmen are going to be so much more like that Zenyatta. They're going to be very fragile, but they're going to have long range, and so that's their defense against that. There are about 17 or 18 marksmen in the game, so it's a fairly small champion pool, but they all have varying degrees of wave clear. Some of them are very bad at clearing waves, and some of them are meant to clear waves really well. It just depends on the ADC. They are your main source of consistent damage on your team. They don't always use abilities to deal damage, and I should have mentioned that, but yeah, you don't always use abilities. Like in Overwatch, your left click is almost always just like some kind of melee attack or like range attack. The same thing exists in League. They're called basic attacks or auto attacks. And so marksmen rely on their auto attacks to deal most of their damage. They don't rely much on their abilities to do that for them. So that makes them very invaluable team fighters. If you have a 5v5 situation, you really don't have the damage on your team to kill the enemy without an ADC. You almost never do. Most of them do single target damage because, like I said, it's like think of McCree, right? McCree is like the closest thing to a marksman sort of in League. He does single target damage, pretty consistent at a medium to long range, and yeah, you usually can't team fight without them. So going to mages, they're our last like major archetype. They normally find themselves in mid lane. Sometimes they go top, sometimes they go bot, but normally they're mid. And they build magic damage items, so staffs and capes and hats and things like that. They are normally your best wave clearers. They're great at killing enemy minions, and so you rely on these people to normally siege turrets. A common strategy would be to have your mage and your marksman sort of team up on a turret, so the mage sort of like wave clears the turret, and then your marksman does all the damage to it because they do it with their basic attacks. I should mention, towers normally only take basic attack damage. You normally don't use abilities on towers. There are very few in the game that work on towers to deal damage. So mages are usually medium to long range. There's a lot of variety between mages. There's probably 40 or 50 mages in the game, and a lot of them are very different. They fall within control mage or burst mage usually, but there's some exceptions to that. As I mentioned before, burst mages are kind of like assassins. They deal a bunch of damage to you with a combo of abilities, and then they kind of run away. Control mages like to stay in the fight. They're usually more consistent form of damage, but not quite like an ADC. So there are too many different types of mages to really say anything about their aptitude as laners, but they are normally good team fighters. You almost always want a mage on your team. A lot of them have some long range abilities, and they normally have a lot of AoE damage. So they're kind of your in like World of Warcraft or something. They'd be your warlock or whatever, right? I mean, I think there's actually a mage in World of Warcraft, and so they do a lot of AoE damage and stuff like that. So they're really good in team fights for that reason. So we already discussed this. Any questions about that? Anything so far?
I'm good.
Sounds like we're good. Okay. So we're nearing the end of this. How long have I been doing this? Okay. I don't know. I'll try to make this next part
30
short.
minutes.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll try to get to the Q&A soon here. But I just wanted to go over with you guys some of the universal strategy concepts. I should have made a slide about the laning phase, now that I think about it. For the first 15 to 20 minutes of the game, Summoner's Riches is in something called the laning phase. And whenever you get out of the laning phase, sort of just depends on how the game is going. But the laning phase is basically when your top laner is top, your mid laner's mid, your jungler's in the jungle. Everything is normal, and it's just like as you start the game. And all you're doing in the laning phase is killing enemy minions to get your like items and stuff. You don't deal that much damage to towers yet. You're low levels. You don't have much health and damage. So you're not that like impactful. You're normally not looking for too many like kills on the enemy champions yet. You're basically just what they call farming, killing the enemy minions. So farming is a term you'll hear a lot in League. It just means killing the enemy minions and getting the money and experience from them. But once you reach the 15 or 20-minute mark or so, that's when some more strategy comes into the mix, and people can sort of leave their lane and go to a different one, and maybe try to start taking the enemy turrets. And so there's multiple ways to do this. Team fighting is kind of the most obvious one, where you just group as 5 people and you try to take like the important objectives, like Dragon or Baron. Usually is what you really want to team fight over. And when you're 5 versus the enemy 5, you just have to basically kill each other, and whichever team comes out on top is going to have a big advantage. So it's a very high risk and high reward playstyle. If you don't play it mechanically well and you use your abilities wrong and things like that, the other team might have a chance to like kill all of you, and sometimes kill all of you without you killing any of them. And so it's like in Overwatch, it would be the equivalent of like losing an entire checkpoint by like defending the cart poorly or something like that. So they can get really far ahead of you if they win a team fight. Some games are decided on the back of one team fight, and then it's just almost impossible for the enemy team to come back from it. So high risk, high reward, but pretty straightforward way to play as a team. There's something called split pushing though, and you're going to hear this a lot in League. And this is normally when a top or mid laner, aka a solo laner, because they're by themselves, they're not bot laners. They avoid team fights. They go to a side lane, like top or bot lane, and they just kill enemy minions. And so they try to get the turrets themselves. They try to kill the enemy minions and have the enemy not be able to kill their minions, so that they get ahead in gold and experience. And the other 4 people stay on the map, just sort of making sure that the other team doesn't get important objectives like Baron. And so when you're split pushing, you normally use something like teleport to enter a team fight, right? So a lot of team fights don't necessarily begin with 5 people just being in the same place. A lot of it will begin with one split pusher in a side lane teleporting somewhere to like join a fight and stuff like that. So, but there's 2 different types of split pushing. 4-1 is what I just mentioned. Bruisers and mages are pretty good at split pushers, by the way. And then there's something called 1-3-1. And just to give you a map, let me actually show you what split pushing looks like. So this is like a 1-3-1 split push, right? Here's an enemy champion, and yeah, these are all the champions. The red ones are red side, blue ones are blue side. In this sort of scenario, these 3 members in the middle lane, they can go to Baron if any kind of fight breaks out, or they can go to Dragon if any kind of fight breaks out. Like, let's say this team brings their 4 champions to attack the Dragon. Well, this team, the blue team, can like bring their 4 champions to like contest them at that dragon. And then these guys over here keep each other from taking these towers, right? And so this is a very complicated way to play the game. It takes a lot of finesse. It takes a lot of understanding to pull off correctly. But this is normally optimal because it allows you to kill all of the enemy minions on the map. When you're team fighting, like in this picture, when you're like this, these enemy minions and these enemy minions don't get killed. And so you want to pick up the golden experience from them because it's super important to make your champions more powerful. So you only really do this when there's like a great advantage to be had. Like normally if you get a turret or like Baron, something like that. And so just to explain team fighting a little bit, this is kind of like how most team comps will work. It's pretty similar to Overwatch, actually. You have like a front line and a back line. So your front line will usually consist of like a top laner and like a support. So a lot of junglers and a lot of supports tend to be tanks. A lot of top laners also just tend to be tanks. And it's just a matter of skill who wins this. Sometimes it has to do with the team composition, like these 5 champions don't like team fight well together, but these ones do. Like maybe they have special synergy. Think of like a Roadhog and an Orisa, how they can like use halt and then hook somebody. A lot of like champions you draft a comp around because they're like so good at team fighting, because they have an ability like that or something like that. And so team fighting is very high risk, high reward. But split pushing looks like this. Any questions about that? It gets pretty complicated from here. I'm sure a lot of you will wonder like when do you split push and when do you team fight and stuff, and that might be covered in like another section, but we could also go over that in the Q&A after. I'm almost done. Okay, sounds like everybody's pretty good with that. So just go over some advanced concepts just to think about them. We have something called wave management. Now sometimes you actually want the enemy minions to like be under your turret. There's 3 different types of wave management. There's called freezing, there's called fast pushing, and there's called slow pushing. Fast pushing is kind of what it sounds like. You just kill all the enemy minions as fast as you can. Slow pushing means that you kill all the enemy minions as slowly as you can. And then freezing kind of means that you allow the enemy minions to kill your minions so that they push to your side of the map. And these are all these all have pros and cons. They all have reasons that you want to do them or not. Lane priority is a large part of it. When you've frozen a wave, I'll show you what a frozen wave looks like right now, actually. So this is like a frozen wave. When, actually, this is kind of a bad picture. I'll show you with this one. So this turret is here. This turret's here. This champion, this red champion here, has lane priority because basically he's killed the blue minions faster than this blue champion can kill the red minions. And so now these red minions will walk into this turret. And what that allows this champion to do is walk around the map and kind of do whatever he wants for a while until the next minion wave spawns. And so this is like kind of a frozen wave. This is actually a fast pushed wave. And there's sort of benefits to this. This is a frozen wave. This is the opposite side of things, where this champion has killed more of his minions than he's killed of hers. And this, it's kind of hard to see, but this is the jungler for this red champion, right? So this is the red jungler, blue mid laner, red mid laner. In this scenario, this blue mid laner is like farther up in the lane. So you're like more on the enemy side of the map. And when you're more on the enemy side of the map, it's easier for you to like kind of get killed. Because this guy will start attacking you, and then this guy will start attacking you, and now like it's harder for you to walk back under your turret where you're safe, right? And so kind of getting to advanced concepts, but minion wave management is probably the most important thing in the game, which is why I mentioned in it. It's probably the single most useful thing your team can do. If you could choose one thing for them to do well, it would be manage minion waves well. And so a lot of people also just don't know how to do it. They don't even give thought to it. So lane priority, like I said, allows you to roam. And when you're roaming, like this red champion can do here, you can like sort of control the dragon. So you can like see the dragon there. Maybe you and your jungler decide to attack the dragon together now because you have some time to do it. And then if you can kill it fast enough, you can just walk back to your lane and start doing the same thing over again, right? And so you can use this to your advantage to like secure your team objectives and stuff. A couple more things on the side I want to mention. I actually won't mention lane rotations. It's too complicated right now. I don't even know if I can mention vision control. Let me pull this up. Oh, actually, this is perfect. So this is what Summoner's Rift looks like, but this is not what it looks like when you're actually playing the game. When you're actually playing the game, you can't see any of this stuff. You can only see a certain area around your champion. And this is covered by something called Fog of War. If you guys play like Age of Empires 2 and that sort of thing, you'll know what Fog of War is. Same concept. It's just black here and you can't see anything. If enemy champion is walking around the Fog of War, you can't tell where they are. That's why junglers are so important, because you don't know where the enemy junglers is unless you're like on top of him. There are something called wards, and so what wards are, every champion gets one. They respawn in your inventory at a rate of like 1 minute, basically. And you can place them down on the ground, and they'll give your team vision of the surrounding area. And so vision control just means putting more wards down on the map than the enemy so that you can just see more of the map. And with vision control, you can sort of see, let's say if you've warded their entire top side jungle. So if you've warded this entire thing as red team, right? And you don't see any of the champions on the enemy team around this area, and Baron is up, maybe you could just do Baron, right? Like if you notice that the enemy team is down here, if you start attacking this objective fast enough, you can take it before the enemy team has time to respond. And so that's how you win a lot of these games, is with vision control. It's a super important thing. And in a team game, the best League of Legends teams will use vision control to their advantage. Ones that are mediocre don't care about the importance of it. And so it's actually definitely also one of the most important things in the game in a competitive sense is being able to control vision. The last thing I'm going to mention briefly is jungle pathing. So we mentioned how the jungler, he doesn't have to start on any particular camp. He just kind of kills whatever monster he wants. But there is a way to do it that makes the most sense. Think of like a multiple choice test where 4 of the answers look right, but like one of them is more right than the other 3, right? It's kind of like that. And jungle pathing, the best junglers will path correctly, like the most correctly. And so they'll kill like this stuff faster, or sometimes you can kill the enemy's stuff and deny it from him, things like that. And so that's complicated all on its own. That could use an entire like slideshow by itself. That's also a very important concept. But I think that the concepts that allow your teams to win and get good are kind of wave management, rotations, control, and jungle pathing. And so that about does it, I think. I wanted to go quickly over similarities with Overwatch. You guys are all Overwatch coaches, and a lot of the skills you have doing this are going to be the same in League. It's very important for your team in League to communicate effectively, perhaps more. In League of Legends, the games are very much longer, and you have like kind of a bird's eye view of the map, so you can see more, and you can like make more decisions based on that stuff. And so it's very important to have good communication in order to make the right decisions. And so it's pretty hard, but it's like with any game, players in League get tilted, they get toxic and things like that. And so as coaches, we're supposed to be there to make sure that that doesn't happen, and things like that. But other than that, team compositions are sort of similar. It's a little different in League. You can't have 2 teams with like not both teams can pick Winston. It's like only one team can pick Winston, sort of. So the champions on each team are going to be unique champions. But drafting the composition is pretty similar. Being able to identify a win condition for a team comp as a coach to your team is super useful. Putting your kids on champions they actually know well is pretty important. Game sense in general, there's a lot of like macro understanding to it. And then also just I mentioned mindfulness as coaches. I think that we have a responsibility to help our players avoid tilt, help our players avoid frustration if it happens, to try to like rectify it or address it in some sense, I guess. And so a lot of these things are going to be similar in both games. I think that pretty much goes without saying. And last but not least, I've compiled a bunch of resources for you guys to look at. Tons of websites, some YouTube channels, and if you're new to the game, these will help you learn much faster. I've made a Google Sheet with all the links, and I can actually just show you guys right now if you'd like some of the websites. Now, I know this has taken a long time. Hopefully, I paced myself decently. I want you guys to be able to ask questions. So I guess we could do a Q&A session right now. If you guys had any questions about that at all, we can like sort of go over stuff. So.
I have some questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to start kind of backing up. But so you mentioned at the beginning that there's 2 champions in the bot and there's only one on the top. Is there a reason?
Oh yeah. Great question. So the dragon here spawns earlier than the Rift Herald. So the Rift Herald, if we go to the river, then we're talking about this. The Rift Herald spawns at 10 minutes. Now it has a lot of health. And so basically 10 minutes is like a long time in this game. Your champion at 10 minutes is not as strong as your champion at 20 minutes. So a lot of times Rift Herald won't even be fought over until like 15 or 17 minutes, 18 minutes, something like that. When you guys are stronger and it's like easier to take it, right? Because it deals damage to you. Like I've seen people, they try to go for the Rift Herald way too early and they just get killed by it because they're just not strong enough yet, right? So think of like if you're playing World of Warcraft, you're level 7 and you're trying to kill like a level 70 centaur. You're like, well, you're gonna die, right? But the dragon, it spawns earlier, and it's kind of easier to take. So the reason why the game has evolved so the bot lane has 2 instead of the top lane is that it's easier to like sort of kill the dragon together. So like let's say your bot lane kills both of your opponents in the lane. That happens, Zale. It can happen at 3, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Um, what you can do after is rotate to this dragon and kill it. So your jungler would come and your mid laner would come, and you just 4 of you together would kill this dragon. And when the enemy's dead, they can't do anything about it. So, yeah, I'm recording it right now for the chat. I'll put it on YouTube soon. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much why there's 2 champions bot lane. I mentioned a little bit about roaming supports, and I guess it's not a reason why there's 2 people bot lane, but something to mention is that there's not always going to be 2 people bot lane. If you're playing a roaming support, you're trying to like go around the map and you're trying to like ward this stuff. What I love to do when playing support, as I play roaming supports, and I walk into the enemy jungle and I just put wards on their camps. And when the enemy jungler does them, all of a sudden my team knows where they are. And the enemy jungler doesn't know he's been spotted. I guess something about wards I should mention. They're invisible to the enemy team unless you do something called sweep for them. And that's like, I could get into that more. I don't have any slides to explain it, but um, when you put vision down in the enemy jungle, or even when you like go to attack the enemy mid laner, supports are just really good at that. And so, yeah. But basically, it just has to do with dragon control. You want to kill the dragon. It's easier to kill than Rift Herald. Especially when Baron spawns, you don't need 2 people top yet. So.
And
Okay.
did you? s-
Oh, sorry.
You said that basically if you get discovered by an enemy ward, like you don't know.
Yeah, so there's technically 2 different types of wards. There's something called the trinket ward, and there's something called the control ward. So a control ward costs gold, and you have to buy it. And a lot of bad players never buy them because they think it's a waste of gold, or they just don't even think about it. But control wards are visible. I guess one little minor detail about the map that I failed to mention was bushes. So you can see there's like bushes. I'll like highlight some. There's this one, there's this one, there's this one, and there's this one. If you put a control word in a bush, the enemy team can't see that control word. In fact, if you're standing in the bush, they can't see it. There's always fog of war in bushes, unless you ward it. So if you put a trinket ward or a control ward of your own in a specific bush, you can see what's in it. But otherwise, you don't know anything's there. So if you were to put a control ward on open ground, it would be visible to everybody. And then the enemy team would like know there's a control ward there and they'd be able to kill it. But if you put it in the bush, they have to walk in the bush before they can see it. As far as trinket wards go, they're always invisible unless one of 2 things happens. You put a control ward of your own nearby that enemy trinket ward, or you use something called Oracle Alteration. And so it gets complicated quick, doesn't it?
It's cool. Keep going.
Trinkets fill an inventory slot. Technically, oh goodness. Okay, let me backtrack a second. There are 6 inventory slots. You can only have 6 items at a time in a game. So it's like if a game went for 2 hours or 3 hours or something, you'd have no more items than you would at 40 minutes. So it's like at 40 minutes, you have all the items in the game you need because you can only buy 6, right? You can't buy all 200 items. That would be crazy, right? But you actually have a 7th, and that's reserved specifically for trinket wards or sweeper wards. Or in this case, it's not plural anymore. They deleted the other one. So it's just Oracle Alteration and Trinket Ward. So the Trinket Ward is the invisible little ward thing that you put on the ground. It gives you vision of the surrounding area, and the enemy team can't see it. But if you're a champion that instead of taking Trinket Ward, you decide to take Oracle Alteration. And so when you activate Oracle Alteration, there's a little cone around your character model that sweeps around and it spots enemy wards that are invisible. And so then it disables them, so those wards can't see anything anymore, and then you have the chance to kill it by basic attacking it.
So that's good for a jungler, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Supports and junglers like to burn them. Supports have access to a special support item that actually gives them wards, so they can have trinket wards and the Oracle alteration. So supports actually always buy Oracle alteration in about 15 minutes. Junglers, it sort of depends. It's a decision you have to make. Like, am I going to keep my trinket wards because I think I can use them more effectively, or am I going to buy sweeper wards so that I can disable the enemy vision? It depends on. It's a trade-off, right? You can't get your own vision while you're denying the enemies, but if the enemy has vision of you and then you have vision of the enemy, I don't know. It's like it's trade-off, right?
I see.
So yeah, but junglers like it. ADCs almost never get Oracle alteration because they don't want to go in the enemy jungle and like sweep
We're not going
stuff.
anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to like stay in the back. They're scared as hell of everything. They're like, oh, please leave me alone. They don't want anybody to be around them. And they're kind of like pufferfish. Like if you get too close, it just like blows up and then you get stabbed, right? That's the idea of a marksman. So he normally only puts trinket wards down and he uses them defensively. So like let's say you're a blue side, right? You are here as a blue side ADC. You're here. You like to put your wards here and here and here. The support on your blue side team likes to put them here and here and here and here and things like that, and they like to be more aggressive with it. But yeah. So warding is a little complicated. I guess I should have added some slides on that, but I mean, you can see there's so much content for me to go through. I don't even know what to add.
No, this is good, man. I did a lot of warding in Smite, but I noticed there's differences with types of wards and all that. But
Yeah.
no, this is, I mean, it's just the terminology to get down and the concept. But
Yeah.
I mean, we're all here because we're coaches and we can pick up on things fast.
Right.
So don't hold back.
Yes.
When you buy an item, is it like a permanent buy or can you switch them out?
So items have a sell and a buy price. So when you buy them from the shop, let's say you buy an item for 3,000 gold. If you sell that item, you're only going to get like a measly sum back. So you can sell the item. It's not permanently attached to your character, but you don't want to like buy one item and then be like at 10 minutes like, I don't like that item anymore. I'm going to sell it. Like it's a really bad deal. So at 40 minutes or so into the game, what you'll see is like if it's a really long game, I mean not even 40 minutes, like 60 minutes or something, people will start to sell their items and buy better ones because they've actually collected so much money that they don't care about selling the other item. It doesn't matter anymore. They have so much money, they don't care about the good deal or whatever, right? So sometimes you'll see that. There's one item in particular in the game called boots, and boots kind of do what you think they do. They make your champion faster. There's different types of boots. So like for instance, there are boots that protect against physical damage, and then there are boots that protect against magic damage. You can only have one type of boot though, so you have to decide which one you get. But a lot of times, also 60 minutes into the game, let's say you're playing a marksman and you have magic damage boots, and you're like, man, I need to do more damage. So you sell your boots and then you buy a damage item. So you buy like a cleaver or something like that. And then now you do way more damage. You're slower and whatever, but like you do way more damage. So you see that happen sometimes too. But those are really long games. What else? Did that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yeah. My other question was around leveling up. So can you talk a little bit about leveling up? Like what are the advantages?
Sure.
I know you said you gain more power, but like how so? And then like what's the ideal level halfway through the game? Like where do you want to be?
Okay. Good questions. I'm going to actually, I should be writing these down. So,
Can I actually get a copy of this slide too? Because this has
Sure.
got some great,
sure, I will.
great notes to use.
Yeah, I'm taking notes, and we'll have this recording up too.
Yep. Okay.
So guys, if you need to leave for whatever reason, just you can leave questions in the comment here, and we can go through them and send out the recording.
Trinkets. I'm just writing your question down. Control wards and sweeper. Then we had this. Why does bot lane have 2 champs and not top?
So I do have a quick
It's a
question
dragon.
about that.
About
So,
bot lane?
well, just lanes in general, because
Uh-huh.
my character right now that I'm like kind of gravitating towards is Yasuo,
Mm-hmm.
and like from what I've played him before because he's my old champion, and I usually go mid with him. But you said usually you want assassins at top, right?
Oh,
Because Yasuo's a hybrid. He's fighter and champion.
Yasuo is a
So
bruiser. You
okay,
actually okay. Yasuo is sort of a bruiser or an assassin. I guess I kind of forgot to add assassins to this list. I suppose I should have added a separate one for them. But Yasuo is one of these very different champion. He's a unique champion. He's a bruiser assassin sort of hybrid.
yeah.
He does a ton of damage with his combo, and he can easily 0 to 100 somebody. He also tends to bring this one, Ignite. He doesn't normally need teleport or like heal or anything like that. He normally just brings Ignite, and so like dealing that extra damage, like all assassins bring Ignite.
Okay, because I've been using a flash and teleport just because. Well, flash is just
You play
very
you play him bot lane, right?
mid. I've been
Mid. Okay.
yeah. So far, I've been playing him mid just because like that was like where I was before.
Teleport is almost takeable on anybody in any lane except junglers, but I mean, yeah, you can play Yasuo with teleport. It's just a
Well,
preferential thing. There's drawbacks to it. There's pros and cons.
yeah.
You don't have extra damage to get kills. Like Yasuo scales really well. And that's a term I should explain. So scaling means that as you buy items,
Mhm.
a champion that scales well makes the most use out of his items possible. A champion that scales poorly does not benefit much from items as much as some other characters. So like let's say Yasuo, he scales really well. Twisted Fate, he scales poorly. So the longer the game goes on, and the more items you have, the more gold you have, um, the more damage you do, the more useful you're going to be. You're just going to get stronger than Twisted Fate as the game goes on. But like Twisted Fate's going to be stronger than you in the beginning of the game. So like
Of
his
course.
goal is to like win the game before you get strong. And then your goal is to like not let him win the game before you get strong, right?
Right.
I
Because
think
so
I
far,
digressed from your question a little bit.
no, it's fine. It's good to know because like uh, I've been actually deviating just a tad from my item build for Yasuo, and I've been finding that a vampiric scepter is actually great for him. But like you said, I sometime at the early stages I lack that extra oomph to like finish off a champion. So I feel like I want to switch my teleport to ignite and keep flash for like escape or like catching up or closing a gap for like marksman. So that's why I'm just like curious as to like what is the better spell to use.
Um, you mean in terms of summoner spells?
Yes, yeah,
What
because
which one is better, ignite or teleport, or which?
well, no, just for my own personal use, I've been using teleport to get back like faster to my lane, so I can like hold
Yes.
a defensive line, which is weird because I'm but I actually wanted to switch teleport now to ignite for that extra damage because I build Yasuo a little bit more tankier than offensive because he's extremely squishy, like really squishy. And then I've been finding that a tankier build for Yasuo with a touch of like lifesteal helps a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well,
teleport is, like I said, teleport's the strongest summoner spell in the game. Uh, if and I mean, sort of, it kind of hard to decide that between Flash. If you don't have to bring Flash, you don't want to. Like, there are champions that will bring like teleport and ignite or something. That's normally not good, but like, um, you need Flash for sure on Yasuo, for sure. Always
oh
bring
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Man, how do you? You ask a good
Because
question. It's really case by case basis. Um, against a poke champion, I know we didn't really get into this that much, but there's like different types of matchups. So like, let's say you're playing Yasuo into this champion called Xerath. Xerath is a long range artillery mage. He attacks you from a really long distance, and you can't do anything about it. You just have to sit there and take his damage. The most you can do is dodge his stuff. and that's easier said than done, right? So if you're up against a poke lane and you're just like getting all your health chunked out, and the other guy has like this huge health advantage, teleport is nice because you can recall more often, and you can survive the laning phase better, right? So this has to do with wave management too. So like probably what you're doing is like you shouldn't be using teleport as a crutch because you're bad at like wave management, which is what a lot of people do. Let's say you want to recall. Maybe you're low on health. Maybe you just got enough gold to buy an important item. Um, Pretty much those are the only two reasons why you want to recall. You want to stay on the map as long as possible, but like if you want to recall, um, you want to push your wave. And Yasuo tends to be pretty good at pushing the wave. He has good wave clear. Unlike some other bruisers, he doesn't even need by Tiamat. He's just like good at wave clear because he has his AoE tornado spell. And he just does a lot of damage, right? And he has no cooldowns. He has no mana. He can just spam his abilities on the wave, and it's going to get pushed. It's dangerous on Yasuo because you have short range to do it, but like other than that, yeah, if you're not worried about that, you can just push the wave. And then when you push the wave, that gives you some time to recall. There's actually a specific time that you want to recall. So let's say the enemy. Okay, so the minions wave just crash mid. Let's pretend these champions aren't on the screen. Actually, let me just. The enemy champions, or sorry, the enemy minions have just crashed with yours right here in the middle. You want to recall. You're thinking, I want to go back to base. You don't have teleport either, so you can't just like do it, right? You have to get back in time for the next minion wave. So in order to do that, you have to kill this wave as fast as possible, and then you want to probably like walk over here, ward this bush, and then recall when your minions are about here. This is like the sweet spot. This is for mid lane specifically. Top lane, you want them to be farther, but mid lane, you want to recall when the minions are here. So like one of two things can happen. Maybe you can't push the wave fast enough, and it's just like in the middle. Like you could be playing like a low wave clear champion, or like if you're Yasuo, maybe it's not safe to clear the wave because you have to get too close to it. So you're just like, all right, I'm gonna leave the minion wave there. You recall when your minions spawn here, and you arrive in base, and you're able to actually walk back to lane by the time the minions are here. So basically, the minions, they're like this. They take like da-da-da-da-da. Let's say this takes 22 seconds. You take 8 seconds to channel your recall, and 15 seconds to walk back to lane with tier 2 boots. So that's 23 seconds. Boom, right? You're there when your minions get there. So that's kind of... If you can't do that reliably, you can bring teleport. Because what you don't want to happen is have this Xerath just like kill all your minions and push the wave under your turret, and then all of your turret just kills all the enemy minions, and you're not there to collect the golden experience. So that's why you would bring TP, is because you get too low all the time, and blah, blah, blah. I would say as a beginner, it's easier to bring teleport, but Yasuo would rather have the raw damage of Ignite, because that way he can secure kills in his lane better. And you getting a kill in your lane early game, as opposed to you not getting a kill, can be a huge difference. It could totally change the tone of a game to have that kill brought to you by Ignite. You know what I mean?
Right.
It can totally change stuff. Because then the enemy, he's not on the map. He loses minions. He loses lane priority. All of a sudden, your jungler can get dragon or something. Like, it can be really bad to die. And then also, you get gold, so you just go back and you're more stronger than him when you guys come back into lane. So once you kill him one time, it's easier to kill him the second time. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay,
Another thing too with the summoner spells, like if you're confident in your ability to kill their mid laner, because like I see a lot of Ignite on Yasuo in the mid lane, because usually it's where all the squishies go, with the exception of Irelia. And yeah, like if you're confident that you're gonna get the kill, like you should take Ignite. But if you're playing Yasuo top, like some people do, usually that's where the tanks go. So like you want to take TP, so that they're gonna out sustain you, and they're just gonna build resistances. So like your win conditions probably gonna come down to you split pushing and then teleporting. But like in the mid lane, Ignite's probably really, really good to work with, unless you're not
Yeah.
confident in the ability to actually kill your lane opponent. Like mid lane,
Yeah.
you kind of want to just like you want to
Um,
farm, but like I don't know with Yasuo, it seems like he's kind of one of those heroes that needs to get started early, even though he scales really good into late game, but like his early game's kind of like really bad. So
well,
like
Yeah.
Ignite
his
kind of
early
just
game,
helps.
his early game is all right. I mean, the thing is with Yasuo is that you have more abilities than people do early game. Like with your Q and E, with just 2 levels, you have your passive, you have your Q and your E, versus like let's say Azir. Azir just has a Sand Soldier, and then you can like
That's true.
move it.
I
But
would
Yasuo has like 5 more abilities than you do, and he has more consistent damage. And since you don't have cooldowns and you don't have mana, you can like spam them. So like Yasuo
Yeah.
is a weird champion because his early game actually isn't that weak, but he also just gets stronger as the game goes on. That's why a lot of people hate Yasuo. Like Yasuo is one of the most hated champions in the game because people don't know what to do against him. What you want
I'm
to do
used
is
to
you
that
want to
hate.
freeze the wave against him. Um,
Okay.
that's the best way to
Then
counter Yasuo. Yasuo wants to do this to you, right? He wants to be this guy, the red champion.
yeah.
When you're Yasuo, you don't want to necessarily be this guy though. Like it's Yasuo wants to push the wave, but he makes himself vulnerable while he does it. I guess that's his like main weakness, and people don't really understand the importance of that. I guess I don't know.
Okay.
I think I digress from the question. I don't remember what the exact
Well,
question was.
no, it's fine because it kind of gives me like an option now if I want to go
I
top
know
or
you were
mid.
talking about like bringing teleport. So like Avery brings up a good point. Sometimes you want teleport for your team comp. Like let's say you're split pushing, right? We were talking about this
Mhm.
stuff. Some top laners like to bring ignite instead of teleport. 90% of top laners bring teleport, but it's gotten nerfed in the last couple of patches, and ignite has gotten buffed, and some of them just like to bring ignite to snowball. So it's the same kind of idea as Yasuo. Once you have ignite, it's easier to get the lead that you want. Um, but once you um, don't have teleport on your top laner, your options are severely limited. So what you really want to do mid game, let's pretend this is a 4-1. 4-1 is pretty common. I would say the most common strategy. So let's pretend these guys are mid lane, right?
Mhm.
They could even be top lane, but basically the point is it's like 30 minutes into the game, and the Baron is up, right? Elder Dragon's not up yet, but Baron's up. So Baron is like super important. As I've said, Baron is like the crux of the game. You can literally just win the game from getting Baron pretty much. It gives you a ton of gold when you kill it, and it gives you a huge bonus to your minions. It just makes it's such an easy like handicap to kill the enemy base. Sometimes you need more than one Baron to end the game. But yeah, it's gonna put you far ahead when you get it. And so
Okay.
when you put somebody down here, like if you're playing mid lane Yasuo and your top laner is Quinn and she win ignite, and your bot laners don't have teleport or whatever, you need teleport because now you need to be here. Because what's going to happen is if their top laner brought a teleport and nobody else on your team does, once it's like 25 minutes into the game, that person with teleport goes bot lane and they push the hell out of your wave, and they take these turrets and they take this turret and they take this turret, but you can't respond to them without leaving Baron wide open. So then one of two things happens. This guy takes your towers and gets like a lot of pressure on the map, and he denies you a ton of golden experience from the minion waves that he's pushing into your towers. And you guys stay around Baron and maintain it and don't let the enemy team get Baron. Or you send one or two guys bot lane here, in which case the split pusher, he just stays safe. He just like doesn't allow himself to get killed, and then the rest of his team 4v1s the Baron. And then you only have like 4 or 3 people here of your own, right?
Right.
So then it's up to this guy's team, the blue guy's team, to just like beat the other guys because they have an extra champion. So like it's easier for them to win that team fight. So when you're Yasuo and you don't have teleport, you can't do that. You can't match the split push. When you do have teleport though, then that's not the issue. Then it's like, okay, it's a level playing field. You both have teleport up. So if any kind of fight breaks out around Baron, uh, both of you are going to be there. So like I said, yeah, you send like 2 or 3 guys down here to deal with this split pusher, and you don't have teleport. Well, then he goes under his turret and he teleports to Baron, and then they take it, and then it takes you too long to walk all the way up there. It takes
Yeah.
5 seconds for someone to TP. It takes about 25 seconds for somebody to walk there. So yeah, depending on the champion, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully that makes some sense. Now, I know, Bethany, I know you had asked a question about golden experience. Can you repeat your question again?
Just real quick, I have a question too because I can't remember. With towers, because I know you get like first blood tower gold.
Yes.
I forgot because I know back then everybody got it. Does everyone still get it, or is it's the people that take the towers, right?
So there's 2 different types of gold you get when you kill towers. There's local gold and there's global gold. The first tower bonus is, I believe, global. I think it's global, like 400 gold or something like that. I actually don't remember the figures off the top of my head, but yeah, first blood tower gold is global as far as I know.
Okay, because like
Yeah.
I know in the past it used to be like everybody would get like a solid 150 from a tower, right?
Yeah, something like that. So towers are worth like, I think 300 gold to the people who kill them. So like if you solo kill a tower, you get 300 gold. If you kill a tower with an ally near you, both of you get 150, and like so on and so forth. Yeah. And then, but there's also some global gold involved. So like everybody on your team gets like 50 gold or whatever it is. I can't remember the figures, but
Yeah, no, it's just because I remember like back in the day, it was like a giant 150 would just appear on your screen, but like you never see that when
yeah,
you're not helping kill the tower. Okay.
yeah. It's in the chat box actually. When you get first tower blow, it'll tell you how much gold you get. So yeah. But yeah, Bethany, did you still have that question about golden XP?
Yeah, I was wondering like what's ideal? Like where do you where do you want to be? As
Okay.
far as
So the optimal way to play League of Legends to get all of the golden XP is the 1-3-1. Because then you have a laner present in all of the lanes for the entire game to pick up those minion kills. Team fighting, one of the weaknesses of it, is that you leave minions alone. So like in this figure, these guys are all leaving these minions and these minions alone. And so they're not picking up that golden experience. If I'm going back to minion waves, siege minions are very heavy in terms of like golden experience. They give you 90 gold per kill. If you kill the siege minion, you get 90 gold, and then it gives you, I think, 87 experience. The caster minions give you 14 gold, like 14 to 16 or so each, and then they give you, I think, like 21 experience. And then the melee minions give you 21 gold or so per piece, and they give you about 57 experience. 50, 57, 51, something like that. I don't know if those figures are completely right. I know the gold is for sure. But yeah. So I see Alfonso is saying, yeah, okay, if you have to go,
Sure.
that's fine. I will write that down. Lane control, vision control, sure. So does that make sense?
yeah, it's better. Thanks.
Okay. You can't always 1-3-1 because the thing with 1-3-1 is that the weakness of this is that let's say it doesn't look like this and all the red champions are in middle, right? So it's like they've got 5 champions here. These 5 champions might just be strong enough to kill these 3, right? They might, like, if they have like an engage tank, like let's say this champion here, he's called Jarvan 4. He can engage on you and you can't do anything about it. He's like super long range engage, and it's like super devastating. These champions here are super like immobile. Well, okay, Lee Sin and Rakan are not immobile, but like Varus, he's got nothing. He just like stands there and he has to dodge stuff by clicking on the map. That's his only thing, or he has to flash, right? So like sometimes against a 1-3-1 comp, it's kind of the most risky to do because these 3 guys here, or well, everybody really, they have to be super hyper careful that they don't die, because they all have the least backup. Like if you're 4-1ing, I don't have a picture of a 4-1, but if you're split pushing 4-1, so like these guys are here, both of this group, like both teams in mid lane are safer because they have like an extra champion to like disengage with. A lot of champions have like some ability that will like kick an enemy away, or they can like flash up or something like that, and they can flash away, or they can like stun somebody who's about to engage or something like that. And so, yeah, run 3-1 requires some masterful like communication to pull off. You have to play aggressively when there's no champions around you, so that you put the most pressure on the map, and then uh, something that helps with it. This is why like vision is so important, because when you know when the enemy champions are, you know what you can do. You know what your capabilities are. If you see 5 people top lane, this guy bot lane, he can just like kill this tower, right? He's like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna kill that tower. And then it's up to the rest of his team to like not lose this tower, or make some kind of advantage on the map. Maybe like you can take Dragon here. Like if Elder Dragon's up and they're 5 top, oh, just take Elder Dragon. Boom. Even if they kill a tower or something, you got a way better objective, and now you can recall and then just kill them and win the game. So like your positioning on the map is super important. 1-3-1 is the optimal rotation to collect golden experience. It's what most scaling comps like to do. It's also the hardest to pull off, because against team fighting comps, they can like maybe they all 5 go to Baron, right? And so this guy has to use teleport to like match them, and then they just walk off a Baron. That's called like baiting, right? So like the team fighting comp, they want to bait your teleports out. So they go to Baron and they start to take it, and the blue team is like, oh no, we have to respond. So they teleport in, and then these guys leave, and then these guys leave because they don't want to do Baron either. This they can't win the 5v5 fight. So then they recall, but now they don't have teleport. So then if the next time this team starts Baron, this guy has to walk over, and you have to be really fast. If you have to walk over, you have to be really fast about it to even be useful, you know?
So maybe to wrap up this first part, could you just maybe summarize what do you guys think you and Avery, if somebody wanted to like start working on something specific now, as something that's foundational, what would you guys say would be like maybe some essentials that you'd recommend focusing on starting off?
Well, first, like the tutorial, and then CSing or creep scoring, I think is like really huge. And then finding a champion that you really want to play and like understanding where that champion can go. And just to get used to the game mechanics, I personally did bots for a while. I would just play against bots until I got comfortable, and then went to PvP. But it's obviously personal preference. And then after that, then I would start looking at builds, using the resources that Drake posted. But right now, creep scoring and
Yeah.
finding the champ you want
Uh-huh.
and the lane you want.
Yes, definitely. As far as it comes to like playing and getting better as a player, definitely playing bot games. Everything Avery is saying. Just for the macro stuff in general, using these websites. I haven't gone over these yet, but like using these YouTube videos. There are so many of these channels out here. Skillcaps is my favorite, but there's a lot more. This teaches you so much stuff. I mean, just look at these like thumbnails, you know. How to get level 3 first, how to exploit bad play, how to control your waves, how do you farm, how do you counter assassins, how do you avoid enemy wards, how do you play top lane, how do you win with basics, how do you solo carry, how do you play with a wave clear disadvantage. Like these videos are so specific, and they'll teach you a lot if you just want to learn quickly. You definitely kind of have to have some knowledge of the game to understand what these videos are saying. So that's why you should play some bot games, find a champion you like, try to understand that role, but also watching these videos fast track your knowledge. Sorry?
I was gonna say, like, with a lot of new people that are like new to the game, I think a lot of people panic like when they back and get to the shop,
Uh-huh.
and they're like, "Oh, I have this gold. Like, what do I buy?"
Yeah.
Like, what was it? The pro build thing? I think
So
that's really good
there's
too.
2 things to this. This is what I use. It's called the Blitz Esports app. It's in the Google Sheet that I provided. It's this one right here. And what this does is it tells you so much about the game. Now, I can't show you the full functionality of this because you actually have to be in the game to like see it. But this is great if you have 2 monitors, because you can just put it off to this side of the monitor, and then it will tell you what you should buy. So like if we look at the victory screen here, let me get a better one. I think it's this one. Yeah, it's pretty good. So if you check this out, it'll give you something like this, sort of, but it will show you like what items to buy. It'll just kind of like walk you through it. Just take your hand and like buy this item, please, and then you don't even have to think about it. You just like listen to what this tells you. It's really helpful like that. As you get better at the game, you'll start realizing like, oh, I should buy this item because it's like very situational thing, and it's just like better. But a lot of champions just have like one or two core items anyway. So like Twisted Fate, you always buy Rod of Ages. You don't have a choice. You always buy Rod of Ages. With Yasuo, you always buy Phantom Dancer. You don't have a choice. You always buy Phantom Dancer and Infinity Edge. If you're not buying those two things first, you're trolling, right? So part of it's that. There's also pro builds. If you're not sure in the middle of a game, you don't have Blitz Esports. Let's say you're playing Zed. You're like, oh god, what do I do? What do I do? This will show you. Really easy, right? It takes a minute to load in. Okay, so first of all, it gives you this huge like array of games that have been recently played by pro players around the world, right? And it shows you a couple things. So it shows you their runes. First of all, this is like electrocute, and then there's like sorcery, secondary. You got inspiration secondary, precision secondary. You can click on these and get more information about it. If you want to, you can see like their build order. So like you can see what they started with, and then like at what time they bought stuff. Oh, this guy bought like 2 control wards, and he sold this item. Like you can see, this is one of those things where you sell an item. This guy's trolling about Storm Razor. You can also see the way they level their skills. You can also see their runes. You can see their summoner spells. You can see their final build. You can also just see it from this screen. You can see the final builds from this right here. If you just look at that, you can take some of the items and be like, all right, I'll get that. And then this is like the most recent winning build order. So like this will give you an idea of how to build it. This is a game that won. It's always a game that won. And then this also just shows you the popular items. So the number 1 popular item on Zed is this one. Number 2 popular item is that one. So like you can assume that just means that you always buy this item first. And then this item you buy it third. And then so yeah. When in doubt, just use pro builds. Look at this and buy these in order of most popular. You also see like the boots that you buy.
And this is all really helpful. I think going back to and letting people check out some of these resources that you've provided is going to be helpful for them to get started too. Because obviously there's no way for you guys to go over all this all the time. But I think this is a great option for people that want to start and have time to do it on their own too.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of these. I've linked some. I might be missing some. If you also want, there's a third way to do this, and if you have a particular player that you like to watch, then you can see that. So like, okay, let's say you play Yasuo a lot, or let's say you play Aurelion Sol a lot. Lots of different playstyles for this guy. This guy, he's Diamond 2. He's really good. And this guy, he's Diamond 1. He's really good. Maybe they play Asol totally different ways, right? And you want to see more intimately like what it is that they're doing, and like maybe you want to play more like this guy in particular. So you click on his profile and it shows you his recent games. And wow, this guy is good at Asol. It shows you like his recent games. You can click on him, and then you can see like maybe he's building like different stuff. Like this guy, I can already tell he doesn't build Rod of Ages first. He gets Rylai's first. That's like a weird thing that he does specifically. He thinks it works better than like the conventional knowledge. And so yeah, op.gg is pretty good for that too. You can look at specific champions and figure out more about them from just looking at the best players who play this in their games. So yeah, if that makes sense. What else?
You're gonna put the PowerPoint and the resources for Connect Camps, right?
Sure,
Just,
yeah. I will put the PowerPoint.
Okay.
No reason not to. Did I miss
Also, that
any?
Blitz thing is sorry. That Blitz thing, it's free, right?
Yep.
And you have to download it and like have it running in the background all the
Free.
time.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
I've never had a problem with it slowing my computer down, but I have a pretty good computer, so. Did I answer all the? Or did I?
For
What's up?
everybody? At least I feel like it's digestible if we wrap up here.
Yeah, I think so.
And then yeah, so let's just keep the conversation open. I know you, Avery. I talked to Alex as well, and Curry are all kind of the higher level of, from what I understand, players that we have already. So if anybody needs to reach out to somebody, we have 4 of those guys that are available. I know for questions or for hopping in a game. I'm sure to either play along or to check out something. So
For carries? Okay. I'm joking.
But yeah, reach out to any of them if we get stuck on something, and then we're gonna most likely do another one that works for everybody too another time. So if you guys have questions, we'll just keep messaging them either to me or directly to Drake, and we can collect them.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be uploading this to YouTube as well.
All right, awesome.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye.
Yep, have a good night, guys.
All right, take care. Wow, my voice hurts. All right, thank you.